I'm excited to introduce a dear client, Amanda Bowe from the Damien Center. Amanda serves as the Director of Human Resources at the Damien Center, Indiana's oldest and largest HIV/AIDS service organization. The center provides comprehensive healthcare, education, and supportive services to thousands of individuals each year who are living with or at risk for HIV. Amanda and I first connected last year, and it's been a true honor to work with her and the entire Damien Center team in my role as their client relationship manager, supporting their retirement plan. Through its one-stop client-centered approach, the Damien Center continues to make a powerful impact in the community, expanding access to care, reducing stigma, and helping individuals live healthier, more dignified lives. Amanda's leadership and her deep commitment to both her team and the organization mission are genuinely inspiring. With that, I'll turn it over to Tara.
Thank you, Abby, so much. I think it's so important that we get to see from our sales team the clients that they're out with day to day. And I always appreciate the introductions that you all give us so that we're able to conduct these sessions. First, I'm going to start off by just acknowledging the organization, the music that we just played, which is by Sean Scoffrey, and it's called Days Like This. So thank you so much for the introduction, Abby. It's so important for us to hear from our clients, and the sessions that we do now, we anchor in with the people that we support, because it's really important, I think, to lift up the organizations who we work with, who I say oftentimes we ultimately work for. So it's wonderful and a pleasure to have you here, Amanda. I'm going to do your introduction, and I think as we do that, Abby Lawrence is eventually going to have you melt away into the sunset. So you're on for a few seconds, but we're gonna stop staring at you in a few minutes. So there we go. She's gone. Okay, so Amanda, I'm gonna read your bio, and then we'll have a conversation. And I like to just look at this as just an opportunity for two people to have a chit chat about what you do and what you care about. But Amanda has a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Indiana University in Indianapolis, and spent 10 years in account project management before moving into the nonprofit sector. Once in nonprofit, she transitioned from human resources to pursue her passion for helping people succeed. For the past 10 years, she's worked directly in human resources, and she's been with the Damien Center since 2021, so 5 years. When you're not at work, you can be found spending time with your high school sweetheart, who you married in 2024, your two loving and crazy dogs, or caring for, get this, 500 plus houseplants. You can go ahead and take yourself off mute. And I feel like we could have a whole conversation around more than 500 houseplants that are in your house, I assume?
They are. Yeah, I haven't counted for over a year, and they've definitely grown. So I know it's over 500.
The plants have grown into new plants, or they've grown because you bought more? Because I don't think they morph into new plants.
Well, you can propagate plants and create more, but I tend to give those away, and I do that a lot to keep them small enough so that I can actually have that many.
I am so impressed with you because I have 4 house plants, and I just learned how to repot a plant myself for the first time a few weeks ago, and I was so proud of myself. But now I realize my little 4 plants have nothing on your 500. So
I mean, hey, to each our own, but for me, it's self-care, and I think that's really important. It's my little Zen time. So if that's not your Zen time, that's totally fine.
I did think it was really nice repotting the plants. The soil is very cold, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But I will say that if I have questions, I'm assuming that you're willing to take my questions, and I'll offer it up to the audience. I'm assuming if anyone is having houseplant issues and they need an expert, I feel like you qualify as an expert. So you may get some messages from some inbounds from our colleagues too.
Totally fair. A lot of our team members refer to me as their plant mom. So
there you go. So Abby mentioned that you have that the Damien Center is Indiana's largest and oldest HIV service center, having opened in 1987. I do think I have a special love for people who work at nonprofits. I started my career at a nonprofit. We primarily support nonprofits here. And so, so the idea that you made the switch from, I'm assuming, was more corporate into nonprofit, I always think is just really admirable. And so let's start out by talking about what anchors you in the purpose of this work. And then we'll talk a little bit about how the organization has evolved over the years since 1987. But first, what anchors you in this work?
So, there's a lot of different answers I could give, but I think, the main thing is the mission and the people. I've always had a heart for social work, but I knew that I'm a bit of an emotional sponge and couldn't do the direct service work. It has a high burnout rate, unfortunately, and it's very special people that can do that work. And so my goal was to be able to help them and make sure that they had everything they need to be successful and help our community and our clients. So for me, that's really what anchors it. It's the mission and honestly our team, who many of them, are part of the LGBTQ community. Our organization is largely LGBTQ, and they want to help that community. We want to help everybody living unhoused in the area. We have a team full of advocates that just want to help the community and help people. And many of them have their own lived experience, which not only helps them in their job, but drives them truly to, want to help people get out of situations they have, been familiar with. So, I would say for me and the team, what anchors most of us is the mission and our goal to improve the community, to help make sure that people stay safe, whether that's from HIV or any of the other STIs out there, make sure that they have housing if that's what they need, nutrition, all of those things.
So I'm going to skip around a little bit, but I feel like it's important to just anchor everyone in the work that you all do. So I know what Abby described as, and on your website also, is that you're a one-stop shop, and it includes medical care, pharmacy, harm reduction, and self-services. Maybe can you just give us a picture of it sounds like that's what it is, but give us a picture. How big is your organization? What's the scope of your organization, and what are all the resources that fall under your auspices?
Sure. Well, it might take me a minute. There's quite a few, but I would say for the size of our organization, we have about 215 team members right now. When I started 5 years ago, we were at 75. So if that helps you kind of see the growth. Yeah. So we've grown exponentially in multiple different programs. Our scope is really like Marion County, which is, the headquarters in Indianapolis, but also like the 6 surrounding counties. And we also serve clients in every county in Indiana. There's 92 of them. So, our main focus, of course, and when we began as an organization was HIV and, helping people living with HIV. And our services kind of grew after that because, initially it was really about helping people die with dignity, which if you just got goosebumps, I get goosebumps every time I say that. That was the reality back then. And luckily, science and things have caught up, and we have now medication that helps it be manageable. It's no longer a death sentence. And that has allowed us to not only help people maintain and be able to live, but also help them with other things that they might need, make sure that they're in care for that. But our different programs include, we have a full medical clinic here on site. Of course, they focus on HIV care, but we also do primary care and gender affirming care. We also have a pharmacy in-house, so they can get their medications right here. We have a food pantry where we also serve daily hot lunches to any community member. Sorry, that word hung up on me. You don't even have to be a client. Anybody that needs food can just come in and get a hot lunch, which has just been a wonderful service that just began this year. We also have a dental clinic that opened last year. That was specifically opened because of feedback from our clients. We use data in multiple ways to help us drive like what programs that we need, what our clients need. And the need for a dental service was very high. And so when we built our new headquarters last year, we added a dental clinic, and it has been very popular. I think we're actually going to have to add another dentist soon, which is a good thing. So, and the clients that we serve in the dental clinic, 1 out of every 2 clients are HIV positive. So we are still focused on, folks living with HIV, but of course our focus is also now on preventing it, along with other STIs. Like we have a Connect to Cure program for hepatitis, things like that, just different kinds of programs to help people in different ways and keep them safe. You mentioned harm reduction. That is also one of our programs, although we don't use that term anymore. Politically, they don't like the term harm reduction anymore. But we call it our Safer Steps program now, which includes a safe syringe exchange, just things like that to help reduce harm for folks living with their choices, but trying to keep them safe during it. We have a housing program where we work with the unhoused, and of course do testing and things like that as well with them, but we help get them housing and get them into long-term programs to get housing. We opened a cafe last year, which, to be honest, has been very beneficial for the team, just because it's really nice to walk down and get a coffee.
That's true.
But it was truly built as another program. So it's really more for employment programs. So we have different clients going through. We have cohorts quarterly. So a group of clients will go into the program. They get Safe Serve certified. They get, trained in different hospitality aspects. And then we try to help them find jobs as well. So it's a pipeline to help them, be able to lift up and take care of themselves. And we can help take care of them in the meantime. So I'm not sure if I even covered everything. There's so many programs that we have. Oh, mental health. I didn't mention mental health. We have an entire team of mental health therapists and some psych NPs to help manage every different situation that our clients come to.
So is that, I'll call it rapid, because 75 to 200 in just 6 years is rapid. Is that rapid growth born out of additional funding or additional data, or what's driving the explosion in some ways of your staffing?
That's a great question. I would say the answer is kind of both. So I think part of it was just the need. Truly, just the need is there, and data. We have data pulled geographically where we can see where hotspots are, which helps us. Literally just in Indianapolis, we can see where the hotspots might be, and that helps us target our outreach to help make sure that anybody that has HIV can get tested, can get into care, and therefore not, potentially spread it. We use data for those kinds of things all the time strategically to make sure we're targeting where we need to be, to try to make sure everyone is caught. We also have a linkage to care team that very specifically works with clients who have originally tested HIV positive and may have been in care for a short time and have fallen out of care for one reason or another. Things changed, they may have become unhoused and disappeared, we couldn't find them, things like that. Last year alone, we were able to link 120 people back into care, which is great because that if they're not virally suppressed, it means they can spread that virus, and also just means we can have wraparound services to help them in other ways.
Yeah.
But it was 120 in 2025, and so far this year, we've already linked 107. So we are constantly looking at different ways that we can impact.
It just means there's so many people out there, isn't it? You're just probably just touching the tip of the iceberg, right? If there's 120 last year, 107 this year. Let's talk a little bit about the data. And I know you were going to pull up a slide, so maybe we'll have Lawrence pull up the slide as I ask you the question. Lawrence, I'm assuming this is probably the first of the 2 slides. But so when we look at HIV trends and outcomes in Indianapolis, what does the data, which I think we're going to show, tell you about the disparity, progress, and remaining gaps? And how do you use these insights to shape your strategy and your priorities, much of what we just talked about?
Yeah, I kind of went into it a little bit already with how we focus some of our outreach.
Let's look at these numbers, let's go through these though.
Yes, they are significant. You can see just how much growth we've had just in the last 5 years on these, and it's just exponential. It feels like it's just continually growing. If nothing else, seeing this, I think hopefully shows you that, the HIV pandemic is not gone away. It still exists, right? It's still there, and it's something that we have to continually talk about and make sure that we are addressing. So many folks are living with it without even knowing, right? And you can just see from this data, and again, we pull geographic information as well to help us target areas, but certainly it's not gone away and won't be going away until there's a magic pill that actually cures it. And we're not quite there. We're hoping soon. But yeah.
And so the number of services, 94,000, that is people who are utilizing your services. Is that what that is?
It is. So it's now that could mean a client has used multiple services, but that would include everything from, dental, food pantry access, if they're using our case management team for multiple things. Sometimes it's helping get a new social security card because that's missing. If you're unhoused, stuff goes missing all the time, and some of that stuff is very difficult to get. So there are all kinds of different services that they might be utilizing here, the housing program, all of those things, but we count all of it. You can see just in the last year from 2024 to 2025, it grew 20,000 services.
Yeah, I am floored. I am floored in all the best ways, because it means that your outreach is working. So out of curiosity, is it more marketing, or what explain from 5,000 services to 94,000? Again, the growth is huge. Is it that more people know about you now, or and Lawrence, I think you could take it down.
I would say I think it's yes, more people hearing about us. So some of it is marketing that has definitely ramped up in the last few years. But a lot of it, frankly, is boots on the ground, our outreach teams going out there, going into the unhoused camps to talk to everyone, to try to get them help that they need, do testing on site to make sure if there is any kind of infection, they can help right away and get them connected to that care. A lot of it really has been boots on the ground. Now, you had originally asked if funding was part of what had increased our services. And so that is also part of it. And with the different, in the last several years, there's been all kinds of new grants available for certain specific programs. So we have like a team that specializes in, the Latino and Hispanic population. And they reach out and target that population to try to make sure and we have teams that are, we have a youth transgender team, and their job is specifically to reach out to help youths that are transgender that may be experiencing all kinds of things. 2026 may feel like a different world than 1987 when Damien was opened, but folks are still, being kicked out of their homes and onto the streets for their wants and choices. And that's something that we are always trying to stay ahead of in different ways. So we're constantly on the lookout for, new funding and new grants that can help us create new programs to help impact more people. So, I think that's been the biggest key to our growth, is continually looking for new funding sources that will impact our community and going after it full steam. And then all of a sudden we've got to add 7 more team members for this new program.
And that's a blessing, right? That is what Absolutely. You want. You want to be able to continue to add new programs and new team members. So let's talk a little bit about what defines success. And in a world where we know that this illness is not quite eradicated yet, like you said, so that can't be your ultimate measure of success. So how do you define success in your mission beyond kind of the traditional healthcare metrics?
Yeah, it's interesting because, traditionally I would absolutely say viral suppression is definitely a way to define it. That has increased. 2021, for example, it was about 87% of folks living with HIV were virally suppressed. Now it's about 91%. So it doesn't feel like a lot, but it is when those numbers are very huge.
Yeah.
So, there are things like that, but sorry, I think I just lost my brain. Say the question one more time.
Define your success beyond the traditional healthcare metrics.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a little moment. I
You're
would
thinking
say,
about your plan. I know.
Yeah. I'm easily distracted sometimes. I would say without just the non-traditional healthcare things, it's truly like seeing our clients get the help they need. We track all of that and have numbers and things, but our food pantry alone has grown to what used to be a teeny tiny little closet where we packed every single corner with food that we could, to our new headquarters now where we have a huge food pantry where it's kind of set up like a grocery store and folks can shop for their own items with dignity and be able to get what they need. I mean, that kind of success is just, it's sometimes even hard to measure, but when you see it, it's just so wonderful being able to see our clients, be able to choose what they want and get what they need and come back every week to do the same thing and get what they're
probably fresh food versus what we used to do before when people donated to pantries and it was all kind of powdered and right. I'm probably getting there that way as well.
Yes, most of our pantry down there is fresh food. Of course, we have some other things that are donated and we obviously give them out. We never say no to donations. That would be silly for a nonprofit.
Right.
But certainly most of what we give out is fresh produce. We even have a small community garden where we grow tomatoes and try to give them out to clients as well. So I think there's a lot of different measures of success. The reality is that, the rate of HIV infection has actually gone up a little bit in the last 5 years. So that might not feel like a success, but that's also because we're actually finding out who is positive, right? So I actually do think that is a measure of success because we're out there actually finding the folks and making sure they get the care they need. Because the reality is a lot of people don't know. And then you get tested for one reason or another, and that's when you find out. And then our team is there to catch you because that can be a very difficult conversation and realization. But to catch you and tell you all about the things that we can do to make sure that you can move forward in a really fantastic way.
I was in college. I was a freshman in college in Haven Hall, sitting on my roommate's side of our room, two-sided room, when I found out about Magic Johnson having HIV. I mean, and I feel like if you're of my age, you know exactly where you were when you saw that infamous press conference and you see him, who he has, thrived. And at a time when that happened where, again, Irish people, they didn't want to play basketball with him. He just was a pariah for quite a bit of time. That has changed. That has changed, and I guess that has changed. But also, what's really wonderful is that back then you felt like he had the opportunity to live because he had money, and now it feels like there have been so many advancements that money is not the thing that determines whether you'll live or die. It really is. Maybe it is, in some sense, access to healthcare, but it's not in the way that I think it was back then. So I'm curious. Although you said the numbers have increased, but the numbers have increased because of the expanded testing, which makes sense. So that's a good thing, right? Because the more you know, the more you know. But what are you seeing are some of the impacts from some of the newer approaches, and even the on-site PrEP access, which and actually maybe you could even say what we meet with our benefits consultants annually to talk about medicine. And it wasn't until last year, actually, when we were doing our conversation last year, that I even heard about what PrEP was and how that has changed people's lives. So maybe tell us a little bit about some of the newer approaches and some of the impacts that you're seeing. And maybe you can even just tell our audience, what is PrEP for people who might not know what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll also talk about PEP as well, which sounds silly, but they are two different things. So PEP and PrEP are two things that have really changed the game for us. PEP is a medicine that you would take if you had unprotected sex or could have been exposed to HIV, and that would prevent you from actually getting it. So kind
and that's
of
as
just
I
like,
understand it. It literally it's almost like a barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if something happens and you're like, oh no, I was exposed, like if somebody has a needle stick or something like that, then we can put you on PEP, and it's a small course of pills, and you don't have to worry about it. HIV can't take hold in your body. PrEP is like an ongoing preventative. So I think of it like a birth control for HIV, if that makes sense. So, people that are out there in the community, whether they're, intravenous drug users, which of course we would point them towards safer steps. But, any way that you might get this virus, if you're out there in the community or you're single, you're dating, that kind of thing, you can be on PrEP. And it ensures that if there is exposure, you don't contract HIV. So been a very huge thing to help keep people safe overall. It's one thing that we are always trying to push in when we walk into a new event or a new community, that kind of thing. Actually, this year was our very first year at Pride. Not in general, we're always at Pride, but our first year where we actually had PrEP at Pride, which meant that folks could literally come up to our booth, get the medication right there, and then set up a follow-up appointment with us. Like, we get some basic information on site so that we can process all of that. And then we set up a follow-up appointment the next week for them to come and establish full care to continually get PrEP. So it's a really good way to just reach people in those communities, like doing that kind of outreach and having it at Pride. It was highly successful. We had slots for only 14 people. That doesn't sound like much, but it takes a little while to get the information. And it was our pilot. And 13, we had 13 people set up to start using PrEP. So it just goes to show that those new thoughts of like, how do we get this out here in a different way? It's immediate that it's become, yes, this is working. We need to get it out more, that kind of thing. And we're already talking, the Color Pride is coming up. I think it's next weekend, and we're also going to be doing the PrEP Pride there. So it'll be something that we do more ongoing. But PrEP in general it's kind of a game changer for HIV to help ensure that there's a prevention there and you have that barrier all the time.
Yeah, I mean, well, your idea of meeting people where they are, right? So there's the barrier to access is just sometimes for fear of walking into the door. And
the stigma is still very much real. The stigma is still very, very much real.
Yeah. So I'll remind our audience, in case they have questions, feel free to jot them down. We'll get to them later. Again, for me, this is just, as a woman of a certain age, I grew up in this era, right? And I grew up in the era of Rock Hudson and Magic Johnson, as I say, and Arthur Ashe, and the idea of the idea of this being a death sentence has certainly changed, which is a really, really wonderful thing. I'm curious, you can tell us. Let's go back to just your all the many services that you offer. And it seems like much of this, it feels like I'm gonna attribute their tremendous growth in part to some of you being there, because you've been around for it. So I assume that you had something to do it. You're sitting on the leadership team and you talk about it.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I value human resources, so I know that you're doing a lot there. So you have this one-stop shop kind of model where you're doing all the things that we talked about before. How does this integrated approach, do you think, change outcomes for your clients? So I don't know if there's a story to tell here, but like an actual story, but how does it change outcomes for your clients, and why does it work more? This seems like an obvious question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Why does it work better than a more fragmented approach?
Well, I think I can give an example of a real situation that happened with a client that we, kind of wrapped around all kinds of different services to help them. It was someone living in an unhoused camp, was positive for HIV, also had some pretty severe mental health issues, which caused behavioral issues as well. We have not all of our clients are like that, certainly, but we do have a lot of clients who have those issues. And, we frankly are the last stop for a lot of our clients. They have been, some of them may have been kicked out or removed from other programs. Their care was too high, their needs were too high, agencies couldn't work with them, that kind of thing. So we take a lot of steps to ensure that we can wrap around and do all the things that are needed. So we have this client, and this is an example of honestly many of our clients, but we're talking to somebody who was in an unhoused camp, little to no access to nutrition, no real access to getting help to maybe get employed, that kind of thing. That client got into care here, had a lot of dental work done that needed to be done. It's a very high need for people living in unhoused camps, typically. And got all that care that he needed, got into our food pantry regularly, was able to come and get lunches every day and be able to have that nutrition, which is just so vital. I know it's a thing everybody thinks, of course, we all need food, but when you're worried about having HIV, how do you focus on all of those needs, right? Sometimes your focus has to be on your basic need of where am I going to sleep and what am I going to eat, and they don't focus on care. So the wraparound services really helps us be able to tackle that in a different way. I think in general, I would say one-stop shopping is easier for everyone, right? Like you can get everything you need somewhere. So that's obviously a big factor, but it's truly like some of it really is about transportation and being able to get to that agency to get the help you need. People living that are unhoused probably aren't going to have a vehicle, may not be able to come, back and forth, certainly can't spend gas money to get back and forth, may be taking the bus or walking miles to get somewhere. If they can get all of the things that they need in one cohesive, like one place, without any issues, talk to case management, go to the clinic, have their mental health appointment, get their drugs at the pharmacy, get everything they need from the food pantry, all of those things, then it negates their need to have to go all these places. I once did a poverty simulation, and if you've never sat through one, I recommend it for everyone because it's really fascinating and eye-opening into how difficult it is to be poor and be able to get what you need. And one-stop shop and that theory is really kind of based on that model of like, how do we help people get what they need? They can get it all here. And if we can't get them the help they need here, we may be able to help pay for transportation to get them to their medical appointment that they need to go to at a different place. There are a lot of different programs like that we use. So I would say we are a one-stop shop, but we also work with other agencies in the area to ensure that we can, help everyone.
Well, the cycle of poverty, it's so difficult to get out of the cycle of poverty.
Yes.
If you are unhoused, you don't have a phone or an email address, so you can't apply for a job or you can't apply for benefits because they have no place to reach you. And your health care, who's going to hire you if you have no teeth, and like all these kinds of things. It really is. It's comprehensive, and you do kind of need a full suite of offerings to be able to help someone, and just not to mention just the idea of someone giving you the confidence before you start any of that stuff, just to have the ability just to know that someone cares about you and give you the confidence to be able to know, able to move forward, to know that that you're supposed to be a part of the society. That's probably the start of it. I notice words matter. And so I'm going to call out, you say unhoused versus homeless people. In the same way that, we talk about people who are handy-capable, right? In the same way that, in kind of nomenclature, the difference between someone, a community of people being slaved or someone being enslaved, it's very different. It's not who you are. What is happening to you does not define who you are. So you're not a homeless person. You are unhoused. All these things, all these words matter when you're giving people back their agency and how you talk about and describe them, and not using descriptors to describe the person, right? Recognizing the person as a person, something happened to a person without a home versus there's no such thing as a homeless person, right? So, but I wanted to ask you a bit about allyship. And when you use the word that you use and unhoused kind of makes me think about the importance of just allyship. For those listening today I'm going to ask you about being an ally in the community, but I also want to recognize that we have I'm sure we have members of the community who are listening. And so while my question is around what are the meaningful ways that we can show up as allies for those who are not a part of the community, I also would love for you to talk a little bit about, if you are a part of the community, what are the I don't know, what do you want that community to know too? So what's important, do you think, for those of us who want to be supportive and those of us who are in the community who may not be feeling support? What's good for them to know?
Well, I am part of the community. I am married to a man, but I have been identified as bisexual since I was a teenager. I would say for me, what I would like to see in the community is safety and equality. There have been a lot of concerns in especially recent times about whether or not some rights will be taken back and things like that. What I would love to see is not having to be concerned about that. I don't know if that's what everybody would say. That's certainly my answer, is that I just feel like people should be able to do what they want. And if they're not hurting others, then let them be and let them have the rights that they deserve. And so I think for me, that's a big part of it. As far as being an ally, there are so many ways that you can do that. We, as an organization, Damien Center had over 4,000 hours. I think it was almost over 4,000 hours of volunteer work last year in 2025. Being an ally can mean doing that, connecting with your local LGBTQ agency, helping them in what they need. Sometimes it's packing safer sex kits that we give out at camps, condoms, things like that, but also in the food pantry helping, whether it's unloading produce and things like that. There are all kinds of different ways that you can give your time or treasure, of course. So I would say donating your time or treasure is definitely a way to be an ally. Obviously, just being accepting of people and their lifestyles, whether or not they're alternative to yours. One of the key things that we talk about a lot at Damien is just respecting people for who they are. And that means, making sure that we're not misgendering folks by using the wrong pronouns, right? We take a lot of care to make sure that our pronouns are very visible to people so that, well, I think you can even see on my name, I've added my pronouns as habit because we do it all the time. We say our pronouns all of the time so that we make sure that nobody is mistakenly misgendered.
No, mine's not on here, but it's on my email. If you emailed me, you'll see it on my email signature.
It wasn't a judgment, I promise. It's just a very common thing for us to make sure that we're respecting people for who they are, and that includes, not using dead names. So even for just our team members.
You want to explain what a dead name is?
Of course, yeah. So a dead name, typically what I'm referencing when I say a dead name is somebody's birth name that they were given, and then perhaps they've transitioned or changed their name, particularly if they're transitioning genders. They may go from a Steve to a Kathy. I don't know why those names came out, but that's what so, their dead name would be their original birth name given to them. And so we take a lot of care for even folks who haven't made the full transition to change their legal name. We use preferred names. So a good portion of our team, their legal names are not visible to the rest of the team or any clients. It's only their preferred names that are visible. And we make sure to take that care with our clients, of course, as well. But I think it's important for us to treat the entire community that way of, we want to know who you are and we want to respect you for who you are. Kind of like what you were saying, a big portion of what we do with our clients is really about relationship building. You have to have trust from them for them to be able to trust you with their care and for them to communicate with you. Certainly it's difficult for someone who maybe doesn't have a phone, doesn't have a vehicle. We don't know where they're living, for us to communicate. So you have to have that relationship to know, okay, how do I get a hold of this person? Where can I find them to get them their medicine or their food pantry delivery or whatever it might be? There has to be that trust.
Yeah. Thank you. It is just simply about respect. I go back to the golden rule: treat others as you'd want to be treated. It's almost that simple, isn't it? And it does feel like, well, I'm going to have Anita join on. I'll ask you a last question about kind of what the last 50 years looks like. But I will say that I do feel like that has changed and has become the idea of checking in with people has become so much more important. And I'll say it in big and small ways, but just in small ways. My name is Tara. Once upon a time, someone would just say your name. Nowadays, someone says, "How do you pronounce your name?" And I feel like in the last few years, there's been so much more of trying to see people for who they are in big ways. From you're talking about kind of gender and kind of your gender preferences or your gender identification to small ways like how do you pronounce your name, right? And it really hopefully it shows a shifting of recognizing the individuality of people, and seeing them for who they are, which is huge, and that's the first step. So I'm gonna I don't think we have well,
Real quick.
I'm gonna invite Anita on.
Perfect.
I don't think we have any questions, but as I invite Anita on, please.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Just
do.
another way to be an ally. Why we're talking, right? It's Pride Month. It's June. There are parades and festivals and all kinds of things happening. Get out there and get involved. I encourage each of you to go do that. If nothing else, it is fun and colorful and
great music.
Just a blast. We had our Pride event here in Indianapolis a couple weekends ago, and actually our rep from MOA, Leah Manick, joined us, drove all the way down and joined us. And it was such a fun day, and it's just a lovely experience to get out there and feel the camaraderie. So I absolutely encourage each one of you to do that in your community.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to ask you a little bit about Pride Month as my last question, and maybe my question might be a little bit heavier. So I love that you talked about just get out there, go out there, have fun, put on your lavender, and like live life and dance and so on. Anita, do you want to join on?
Sure. Right now, we don't have anything that has come into the chat. And I think at one point we were looking at Slido. No, so we don't have any questions currently, but definitely thank you so much, Amanda, for your insights. This has been a wonderful discussion, and I definitely hope everyone on the call has gotten a lot from it.
All right. So I will.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Gosh. Yeah. You had one more slide that I think you were going to show. Did we talk on that topic? I want to make sure before I ask you kind of a closing.
Oh,
question.
I think we touched on it a little bit. I think we were going to show the growth by department just to show the stance of it. But certainly if anyone's interested in the data, I shared a whole bunch with Anita. So probably more than you'd ever want to know.
So let's talk a little bit about Pride Month, as you just said. And Pride Month, I'm assuming most know, but I'll just say Pride Month is the annual global observance dedicated to celebrating LGBTQ culture, history, and visibility that was started in 1969, so over 50 years ago. And it serves as a space for the community, and we'll use community quite broadly, right? So those who are members, but those who are allies in the community, to honor the struggles for civil rights, to push for equal justice under the law, and promote self-love, acceptance, and community. And I'm going to ask you a kind of big question, but so forgive me for the bigness of this question, but how would you describe the state of affairs for this community over the last 50 years? I know it's a really big question to ask, but I think it's important to give a sense of perspective, and things have changed or not changed as pendulums have swung back and forth, but not asking you to speak for the whole entire community, but
yeah, I can kind of only speak from my perspective.
So that's exactly. I'm not going to ask you to speak for the whole community, but I would say, how would you describe the state of affairs? And again, maybe it goes back to allyship, but also funding and all. Feel free to kind of use this as your catch-all to tell us everything you think we should know before you go.
Yeah, I would say I think 50 years is a very large time span, but I think if I'm asked that question, I'm talking from my perspective. I'm thinking about all of the changes that have happened in the last 10 years or so. Maybe even a little bit longer, but being able to get married, being able to do all of those things, obviously huge changes. And we saw a big upswing in the community and equality and having the rights that we want and deserve. At the risk of getting political, which I won't do, I would say that things have changed a lot in the last couple of years. And of course, I think if nothing else, it's brought the community together in an even stronger way. You can think back to, Stonewall and all the things that happened there, but truly in a lot of ways, I feel like we're almost back there in some ways where we're all fighting and advocating to ensure that we can keep the rights that we need and deserve. And, you know, from my perspective, and I think I, you know, can speak for the org on this to say that we will continue to always fight. Healthcare is a right, and you should be able to access healthcare, and you should be able to get what you need and be able to do what you need to do. And so we will always continue to advocate and fight for equality and rights and access to care.
Well, Amanda, I thank you for joining us today. I thank you for entrusting us with your employees' most precious resources, which is saving for their retirement. We don't take that lightly at all. I wish you pride and joy on this Pride Month. We will we look forward to continuing to hear about your organization's continued growth. We're gonna close out. Lawrence is gonna put on the song that we came soon, and then you can hang up. But last question. I didn't plan this, but do you have a favorite song? If you kind of, when you go to the Pride Parade and they're singing and dancing, is there a song that makes you kind of like, you know,
you know, I just immediately think of really any Cher song, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
You know, I think that's pretty much my go-to. My boss would be upset if I didn't say a Cher song. So,
so a Cher song it is. So with that, we'll say thank you, Lawrence. Go ahead and cue the music. I always like to dance say way out, and then Amanda, you can dance as long as you want, and then you can naturally drop when you don't feel like everyone watching you dance anymore.
Well, thank you, everyone, and happy Pride.
Thank you. Same to you.